signature issue because it means that every country that wants to raise its prestige in the world sees this as a potential opportunity, right? It may not be the only way to raise your prestige. You can build a nuclear bomb. You can, pull off a regime change in a different country. Do it successfully, that will raise your prestige. Screw up, it may not. But nonetheless, abolishing the death penalty is one way to do that, to raise your prestige in the world, to earn a lot of plaudits from the UN and from actors and nations around the world, as well as perhaps better trade opportunities with Europe. The other country that many observers, including Johnson and Zimmering, have been sort of expecting to shift into the abolitionist camp is Taiwan. Taiwan had a de facto abolition that was going on for about 5 to 10 years until actually last year when 5 inmates were executed in one night. It's kind of a strong way to say that the abolition is over, or the moratorium is over. Nonetheless, it looks like it's following many of the patterns that we've been looking at. It's obviously moved from it's become one of the most developed countries. Again, I'm old enough to remember when people said, eat your vegetables, those South Korean orphans need it, to becoming one of the dominant manufacturing technology powers in the world today. We also have a shift from military dictatorship until 1986. And perhaps even more importantly, a shift from long-time one-party rule by the Kuomintang, or Nationalist Party, that had been part of the losing side of the China Civil War earlier in the 50s, was replaced, put out of power by the election of opposition leader Chen Shui-bian in 2000. Many people expected this to move Taiwan toward abolition, and as I said, it has not happened yet. And there'll be, despite the execution of 5 inmates last year, there remain, and the fact that there's a new justice minister that's fairly pro-death penalty, there remains considerable debate in Taiwan and a strong human rights response. I should have said for Korea as well, one really interesting question might be the role of religion. We know that Korea has the most Christian population of Asia. I think that's accurate, or has a higher proportion of its population Christian than other Asian countries. And of course, Christians differ on support for the death penalty, but the Catholic Church, which is an important one, is abolitionists. Yeah.
Actually, I'm pretty sure Philippines has a higher Catholic.
Good point.
And Korea, the numbers always arguably, but they're usually like equal percentage of Buddhists as well as Christians.
Okay.
I think politically kind of offset each other.
Point taken. And by the way, the Philippines, I think, is one of the other abolitionist countries, or at least one that essentially doesn't use the death penalty. So there may, again, examples of religious values as a potential factor here. Finally, of course, there's we can't end without thinking a little bit about, obviously the 800-pound gorilla of Asia, which is China, as the world's soon-to-be perhaps preeminent economic power and obviously the largest demographic unit on the planet. China is not only fascinating, but there's multiple Chinas. In fact, if somebody wants to study China, one thing to do would be to break down the parts of China and sort of look at the history or particular controversies about the death penalty. One of the interesting stories, obviously, in China is the role of the Communist Party. Communist Revolution in 1949. German Mao Zedong, major fan of the death penalty, uses, as many communist leaders did, uses execution as a major tool of establishing rule in the course of a revolutionary conflict. Cuba did this, Stalin and Lenin did this, and Trotsky in the Soviet Union. There's something about communism that, because it's a secular reform vision that imagines that it's creating tremendously progressive change, it's also willing to, as Lenin famously said, break a few eggs to make an omelet, right? There's a willingness to say, well, we're doing this for a cause. On the other hand, there's very interesting evidence that even Mao Zedong's own interest in the death penalty had more to do with his cultural heritage from where he came in China than necessarily from his communist ideology. Because, and again, forgive me that I cannot recall the exact province that he's from, but apparently it's a part of China with a very long tradition, not only of executions, but of vigilantism, sort of local lynchings. And again, it would be very interesting to look at that history more. There are certainly some signs of change in China, and I think they're all interesting ones. One is away from the public execution toward the lethal injection chamber type of execution. And that obviously is very resonant with the first abolition, partial abolition. Secondly, and consistently with that, real consideration of relying less on the death penalty, even if they're not going to get rid of it altogether. And the third point I think I want to make is that one of the growing sources of discomfort with the death penalty in China is the larger issue of fairness and the rule of law. And this is not just in China. Throughout Asia, the death penalty is connected to a whole set of concerns about the quality of the justice system, whether police are corrupt or whether they may cut corners when they're under pressure to assign blame to somebody, whether the court system has enough integrity to try people with their lives at stake, whether the legal representation given to capital defendants is adequate. Those are the kind of issues that only developed as part of the American debate about the death penalty in the 20th century, and they're coming to the fore very much in the debate about the death penalty in China. And of course, the global human rights issue. China is obviously very assertive in insisting that human rights critics of its human rights records are hypocrites. And most famously, recently, they held their own Nobel Prize ceremony and pretended the other one didn't exist because they weren't happy with one of their dissidents being awarded a Nobel Prize. So they're obviously quite capable of digging their heels about human rights. But they show great indication that they see the risk there. That is the risk that China could become more isolated or could lose the kind of warm relationship it wants with European countries around the issue of the death penalty. So as I close here, I think it's helpful to think about the path to abolition or staying the course of retention in terms of what a country and its leadership, of course, gain or lose by abolition or retention. And I think that the point I want to leave you with here is that a lot depends on the actual condition and the nature of the country and how the death penalty is being used. And let me give you two contrasts. One, China, a country we've just been talking about, in which the death penalty has long been practiced and been very popular, but which has shown some signs that it may move toward abolition. Signs that, as in Europe, are very consistent with the strength and confidence of the central state itself. The more confidence that China seems to have in its own stability as a state, the more willingness it seems to have to consider modifications and reforms of the death penalty. One of the interesting things about the death penalty in China is that in many ways it's a populist tool. We saw how popular it is among Chinese poll takers or informants, 99% approval rating. And even if that's a bit of an exaggeration, what is clear is that Chinese leaders can use the death penalty currently as a way to appear to be responsive to local concerns. One of the, the very typical reasons a death sentence will come down will be because of a local scandal. A school collapses because the party secretary took some of the funds that should have gone to building the school, and the money's not there. They may put that school official, party official, on trial and execute them as a way of saying, we feel your pain, to local citizens who are not allowed to really put direct pressure on the party. So the irony is that the Chinese state, I guess I put it this way, in China you've got a state that is very effective and very controlling and very strong, and for which the death penalty is arguably a way of signaling some interest in popular opinion and responsiveness to popular view. I would say Jamaica is almost the opposite. It has a fairly vibrant democracy, although rule of law issues are considerable. Lots of people turn out to vote, sometimes with a gun in their hands, but they do turn out. Very competitive party system, etc. In that sense, Jamaicans do not lack for plenty of opportunities to express themselves. Jamaica is the anti-Singapore. I mean, there's no meticulous control of everyday life. It's a more looser place in all kinds of ways. On the other hand, Jamaica is the anti-China in the sense of an economically very marginal and politically very non-powerful state. Jamaica is a tiny country, economically marginal to the world. Most of the things that they produce that are most profitable are illegal, and many of the other things they produce aren't, they don't have a significant enough edge on to really control the market. The state is essentially a rent taker. It can't really establish any real claims around the world. Essentially takes what it can get. And from that point of view, you have the death penalty in Jamaica very much playing a role of giving the state something that it can do that seems to be effective. I mean, crime is very serious in Jamaica. Building the prison system up or the police system in order to respond to that would be very expensive, and Jamaica doesn't have a lot of money. But hanging robbers and murderers, actually only murderers, although they have a very broad definition of murder there, is one way to show that the state matters. And so you end up with two very different reasons to retain the death penalty. In China, the reason to retain may be to be more democratic, ironically, to show that you're responsive to the public's demand for it. And the road to abolition may be carved by a growing confidence that the central state doesn't need to rely on the death penalty. In Jamaica, retention seems to be driven by the state's need for competence to show that it can do something in a world where it doesn't have very much political or economic power, but democracy has other ways of expressing that democratic ambition. So I will stop there. Let me say two things before I let you go. One is about the readings on LWAP, the new death penalty. How many of you were able to read or find the New Yorker article? So nobody. So yeah. It used to be that the whole thing was up there. Now it's just a blur. What the New Yorker does is let you read the whole article for a couple weeks, then they put the paywall up. So my apologies. What I put up instead is two things. My article, and then a different article which I just put up this afternoon that's short and gives a good description of the death penalty. I would like you, if you have time, to read that. Let me put it this way, either read that one or read my one. Read one or the other. I'll put an announcement out to remind you of that. That's for Thursday. Let me also ask you, I've just learned, although I could have guessed it before, that the people who clean this room share with us the sense that it's not the nicest room on campus. They don't blame us for that fact, and we don't blame them. But they're doing the best they can to keep it clean, and I would like to communicate to them that we're going to do our best. And I've seen no evidence that we haven't, but we're going to do our best to leave it at least as clean, and maybe even a little cleaner than we saw it. So if you have a bottle or a cookie or something you brought in today, if you want to take that with you on your way out, I know our custodians will very much appreciate it, and I'll see you on Thursday.